Well, I hope you're having a great Saturday or whatever day it is that you're watching this video. And I just wanted to kind of encourage you to stay the course. Keep on going. Some are reporting great victories. Some are saying, hey, I'm not seeing much difference. Some are saying, well, I'm seeing some, but I'm not really where I want to be. Well, wherever you are on that spectrum, just keep going. Give it a good 3 months, if not 6 months. When I set this for a 6 months program, this 2022 challenge, I knew many people would see victory in 3 months. I knew that would be the case. I also knew not everybody would. And that's why I made it for 6 months, because some people it's going to take longer. You say, why is that? I can't answer that question. I've got some theories about it. I can say some generalities about it, but I can't point specifically to your case and say, well, it is because of this or this or this. In any case, stay the course. I want to just sort of go over what's at the heart of this way of life and way of eating that I am encouraging. And, you know, some of these meals that I'm encouraging you to try and I'm giving you the links to, some of them you'll forget. Some of them you'll love and you'll say, I'll be eating that the rest of my life. But whatever you keep or discard, whatever you remember or totally forget, let me just encourage you to remember these things. At the heart of this way of life, and that's what I like to think of it more than as a diet, a way of life, a way of eating for life. At the heart of it are several key principles. One is the time-restricted eating. You notice I'm saying have 2 meals each day. Not 6 meals, not 8 meals, not 10 meals, not a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack and a snack, but rather have 2 meals separated by about 6 hours. So that doesn't mean for 6 hours you eat constantly. It means you have a meal at the beginning of the 6 hours, say 12:30, 1 o'clock, or 12 p.m., and that is your first breakfast, breaking your fast. And then you have another meal somewhere between 6 and 7 at about the latest. That's your second meal. You don't have any snacks in between. And then once you have that second meal, you lock up the gate and you throw away the key until the next morning where you do it again. Now, I do allow for bulletproof coffee in the morning in lieu of a breakfast. So whatever time that is, for me, that's usually around 9 to 9:30 a.m. So that way, it's not long before I'm eating. If I have my bulletproof coffee at 9:30, I only have to wait 3 more hours till 12:30, or 3.5 till 1, and I'm having my first real meal. So that's called intermittent fasting by some. It's called time-restricted eating by others. Basically means you condense the time of the day that you allow yourself to eat all by itself. If you did nothing else but that, it would be powerful, it would be effective, it would help you in your search for normal glucose. It might not do the whole job, but it would certainly help. And for some people, that's probably all they would need. I've heard of some that said, well, I didn't change anything. I still eat about what I always did, but I restricted my time of eating, and lo and behold, it got my numbers down. Now, I don't think that's all you should do, but by all means, you should be doing that if you at all can. The only person that maybe couldn't would be if you're taking insulin or diabetic meds, and you got to be careful that you don't get a hypo, so you may have to eat a little more in the morning. You talk to your doctor about that. I would encourage you, although in this diet I really didn't say much about it in the diet recommendations and the food recommendations, but really for the rest of your life, basically you should make lunch, if at all possible, your biggest meal, your most filling meal, and that's where you should get more carbs than any other time. Obviously, you're not going to hardly get any carbs with your bulletproof coffee in the morning, or it could be bulletproof tea. Then you're going to get perhaps some carbs for lunch, some carbs for dinner. But the meal that's going to have the most carbs should be your lunch. Why is that? Dinner is vital. Dinner is critical. Dinner is important. How else can I say it? Because that evening meal is going to set the pace and set the course for all the rest of your evening, all through the night. And then if you only have bulletproof coffee in the morning, it's still going to be setting the pace until you have your next meal. So if you can have a pretty low carb meal. I mean, quite low carb, I should say, not pretty low carb, but quite low carb meal for dinner, for your evening meal. And then you're not going to eat any kind of real serious food until lunch of the next day. You're going to put yourself in a strong position to have low glucose, relatively speaking. Now, for you, it may not be as low as you wish it was because you're still in the process of beating this thing, but relatively low glucose, relatively low insulin levels for a good long while. So if you've got 2 meals during the day, and one of them is higher carb than the other. Now, none of them should be high carb, but even though both are low carb, one has more carbs than the other, obviously. So that should normally be your lunch if you can swing it. Now, there is a problem I haven't really talked about with lunch, and that is some of you work out. When I say work out, I mean you work outside the home. A lot of people work in their homes these days, and it makes it real easy to set your meals and all that. But if you work in an office or you're a teacher that works in a school, sometimes it's a little difficult, and it makes it easier for you to just have a couple of boiled eggs and a piece of cheese for lunch and then have your real big meal for dinner. And if you got to do that, you got to do that. And there's others that say, well, that's when I have my family dinner. That's where my wife and myself, or my husband and myself and our children, we're all gathered around the table. That's when we want to have a really nice meal. Not for lunch when I'm at the office. So you got to work all that out. But everything else being equal, it's really much better to have your higher carb meal for lunch. And again, I'm not talking about a high carb meal. I'm just saying it's a higher, slightly more carbs. And then for dinner, you have a really, really low carb meal. Now, here's a little tip. Your fasting morning glucose reading, when you test yourself with Mike the blood sugar meter, will kind of be a report card on how you did yesterday and how you did at your dinner meal. And normally speaking, if you do well at your dinner meal, you keep it fairly early, like 5 or 6 p.m., and you keep it quite low carb, your fasting glucose the next morning when you wake up should probably be, now some of you have the dawn effect, so it's not always true, but should probably be much better than if you eat later and you have more carbs to your meal. So your fasting glucose meter reading is kind of like a report card. It's saying, here's how you did yesterday with that final meal. This morning, for example, I woke up and I was pleased. I had an 87 as my fasting glucose. I thought back, okay, you must have done something kind of good because that's a little better than normal. Now, I've been getting in the upper 80s or low 90s most of the time, but 87 is a little bit better than usual. And I thought, okay, well, I ate at Applebee's last night and I had a grilled chicken salad and no dessert. And then I went home and Benedict and I watched a movie and I did make a chaffle and put on some of that cream cheese / sour cream sweetened with a little stevia and some berries in it. But again, it was on the small side and very low carb. A chaffle is such a great food because you're dealing with cheese and an egg, and neither an egg or cheese has hardly any carbs to it. Cheese will have a little more maybe, but not much. So anyway, that was a little treat on a Friday night. Anyway, that 87 was a report card telling me, Dennis, you did pretty good last night, and it will be for you. So anyway, at the basics of this diet is 2 meals separated by about 6 hours, 12 to 6, 12:30 to 6:30 p.m., 1 o'clock to 7 p.m., something like that. And they're both low carb, but if you have to have one higher than the other in carbs, make it your lunch meal, if possible, if you can do that. And then the third thing is you have one day where you do a carnivore day where you're basically getting no carbs. Now, not totally, because a lot of times on carnivore, you'll eat some cheese and that'll have a few carbs, or you may eat some sausage and you look at the package and it tells you it's got a couple carbs. They threw in a little bit of sugar, not enough to really make much difference, but still it's there. So not a technically 0 carb day, but essentially a 0 carb day, more or less a no carb day. Now, I'll tell you something. a lot of times, in fact, most times, I don't do that carnivore day. I just do a fasting day, a 36-hour fast. The evening before is my last meal. Don't eat it all that day. Start in the next day. So that's better still, but I didn't want to push that on you. I didn't want to get too tough and too strict and make it too difficult for you. And I'd have people dropping out right and left. And sometimes you got to be a little moderate. Plus, for some of you to fast purely, you could get yourself a hypo if you're still taking the meds and still taking the insulin. So I didn't push that, but you might consider it. If you're not taking meds, you're not taking insulin, and you want to give it a try. And when I do those 36-hour fasts, I don't even have the bulletproof coffee. When I'll have coffee, but it'll be black coffee. So basically, pretty much nothing at all for a whole day. And then the next morning, I take it up again. So 2 meals a day, and then they're both low carb, but whichever one has a few more carbs than the other, try to make that the lunch if you can. And then the carnivore day or just a pure fasting day. And the other thing that's really a part of this diet I consider vital is don't get hungry. Don't go hungry. I think one of the reasons diets fail so often is they just leave you starved. And a lot of people, especially, they try a vegan diet or try a vegetarian diet and their blood sugar is spiking up and down and up and down. And it's hard to get filled up on rabbit food. You know, eat some lettuce and eat some cabbage and eat some carrots and stuff. And you can get full for a couple of hours and then you get hungry again. That's the beauty of a high-fat diet. You fill yourself up and you have that feeling of satiation. But don't go hungry. So if you need to eat a big meal, eat a big meal. Preferably more at lunch than at dinner. But don't go hungry. And if you say, well, I've got my piece of meat, I've got my salad, but I don't know if I'm going to get full, make a chaffle or have an avocado. Or cut yourself off a big chunk of cheese. There's a number of fillers. I've made videos about that, side dishes and filling foods that are very low carb that will help you. If you can stay full, this diet will be so much more sustainable than if you're hungry all the time. You just can't be. And that's why the low carb / keto diet is such a beautiful thing. It will be filling for you. Even the bulletproof coffee. And you say, well, how can that even be filling? You're just drinking liquid. But the thing of it is, you're drinking in a lot of fat, and that fat is filling. Fat is so much more filling than a bunch of veggies. So it will work. And basically you develop, and what I hope you will develop, is a lifetime rhythm. A rhythm that you can do tomorrow, next month, next year, throughout the rest of your days. And I'll tell you what, I am there by the grace of God. I don't find it a sweat. I don't find it a terrible burden to eat the way I do, to do the 6-hour window of eating each day, to have the bulletproof coffee in the morning. I don't find that a terrible burden. And of course, at my age, I don't have that much long to go anyway. I'm almost 69. So if I live to be 80, I figure I kind of win the longevity game. I hope for the sake of my loved ones, I can go a little beyond 80. But if I make it to 80 in good health, I figure I win the longevity game. Now, the ultimate game of life is not how many years you live, but how you die, whether you die in Christ or outside of Christ. But still, I've got I'm almost 70, so really about 11 years to get to 80, or 11 and a half years. And if I go beyond that, praise God. If I don't, that's okay. But I can do that. I can see myself when I'm 75, when I'm 78, when I'm 81, having my bulletproof coffee and in the same rhythm. Now, I'll probably make some changes because I'm constantly evolving and seeing new opportunities and new foods and new choices. But it'll be low carb. There'll be time-restricted eating. And oftentimes, I won't say every week, but oftentimes there will be a day of fasting where I just basically shut it all down for a day and kind of reset myself. So let me encourage you, develop a rhythm that'll carry you well beyond this 2022 challenge. I mean, this is just kind of, like I say, your training wheels. This is just to get you started. You develop your own rhythm, figure out the foods that you like, the foods that work with you. Keep checking with your blood sugar meter, mic to meter. Keep checking. Find out what pleases him. Find out what offends him and stay with it. And you're going to be in great shape. Your blood sugar levels are going to come down, and you will be doing very well.
Probably most of you know my wife Benedicta, but few of you know the amazing paths God has led her to bring her to where she is today. Benedicta was orphaned at an early age and lived with an elderly stepmother growing to adolescence. They were so poor, Benedicta had to drop out of school and sell food door to door for them to survive. As a teen, Benedicta got a job as a housemaid, which developed into a nightmare. She was required to cook, clean, wash, take care of the children, and she had to get up at 4 a.m. every day just to get her work started. Worse than that, she was frequently beaten. At around 20, she moved to the huge city of Lagos, where she started her own little business. Sometimes she prospered, but at other times she nearly starved and went days at a time without eating. At one point, she became so sick she passed out in her room and nearly died. She found herself outside of her body, and she was able to see the splendors of heaven until she was sent back with a command to share her story. One day, however, her life changed when an American evangelist came to her community to preach, and of course, that was me. The rest, as they say, is history. Benedicta has shared her life story in a recently published autobiography, and you can get it on Amazon as either an ebook or a paperback. A link to this book on Amazon is in the description.